Who says there's no such thing as a Devar do-over? Technology issues were front and center several weeks ago. Fortunately, humans can tell the technology what to do, so indeed there's an opportunity for the complete Devar to be given. I'm certainly grateful to Rabbi Baisley for allowing this. Speaking about Parashat Re'eh, Deuteronomy chapters 11, verses 27 through 31. Re'eh anochi notain. See, you are granted freedom to choose. Choose what, exactly? Pretty simple. Blessings or curses. Blessings if you obey God's commandments, described in the Torah, and curses if you reject them and turn to other gods. This free will choice demands knowing our history from Abraham through the present. The Barachah recited before reading the Torah praises God who gave us the Torah, v'natan lanu et Torato, which is in the past tense, and then praises him as giver of the Torah, notein haTorah, which is in the present tense. This parsha offers the same past tense and present tense reflection. Is this a coincidence? No. See, the A Gibbs Rule 39 applies. There's no such thing as a coincidence. For ACI's fans, there's a few more rules that might be applicable. Rule number 3, never believe what you're told, double check. Rule number 9, never go anywhere without a knife. But I digress a bit. The text tells half the people to climb Mount Gerizim to announce blessings, and the other half climb Mount Ebal to denounce curses. These two mountains are located across the Jordan near the terebinths of Moreh. Remember this place? Here, God told Abraham in Genesis chapter 12, verse 2, that the land of Canaan would be given to his descendants. God says, I will make of you a great nation. Those that bless you will be blessed, and those that curse you will be cursed. This fusion of past and present has the entire people on both these mountains face to face. Nation building was God's plan. Take a people, forge them in the blast furnace of Egyptian slavery, deliver them through the narrow Red Sea passage, then refine, nurture, and develop them on the journey through the wilderness. The last verses of Parashat Ekev, Deuteronomy chapter 7, verse 1, and other parts of this same book speak of dislodging larger and more numerous nations from the land promised by God. God promises that no nation will be able to stand up to Israel when it enters the land of Canaan. This, my friends, is the building of a nation, and Torah is our constitution. History is remarkable as it forms the context for the present. Several years ago, we went on a family trip to Colonial Williamsburg. There was a sturdy brick building set apart from all the others, the Williamsburg Magazine, a place where gunpowder was stored. We learned that on the night of April 20th, 1775, on orders from Lord Dunmore, the governor of Virginia, all the gunpowder was seized. Identical instructions to confiscate gunpowder were sent to governors of all the colonies. Rationale? Preventing violence and resistance to the oppressive taxation policies and restrictions on commerce, including the much despised Stamp Act. Let's travel now to Massachusetts. On the night of April 18, 1775, hundreds of British troops, ordered by Governor Thomas Gage, marched from Boston to nearby Concord to seize and destroy its store of gunpowder. Forewarned, the gunpowder was hidden in the fields, thanks to the midnight ride of Paul Revere. The next day was the Battle of Lexington and Concord, the shot heard around the world. Now in open rebellion, gunpowder and a lot of it were going to be essential. The problem? Gunpowder in America was produced in only 3 gunpowder mills. The other 90% came from overseas, the French colonies, especially the West Indies. In the days following Lexington and Concord, militiamen poured into the area around Boston. British ships and troops were also assembling. Bunker Hill was a high ground and strategically placed across the harbor from Boston. Defiantly, the Patriots constructed a redoubt, a circular fortification with an exit in the back, with their cannons trained on the warships and on the field of attack. Despite their preparation, they were short of gunpowder. Orders were given to hold their fire until the attacking soldiers closed to 50 yards or less, until they could see their splash guards, called half-gaiters, that British soldiers wore around their calves. The battle was on. As the storming of the redoubt intensified, the American gunpowder supply dwindled. Repelled twice, the British improvised, repositioning their artillery and switching to grape shot. The infantrymen then marched forward in well-spaced columns rather than a broad line. As the Patriots' ammunition expired, their firing sputtered and went out like an old candle, said the American commander. His men resorted to throwing rocks, then swung their muskets at the bayonet-wielding British, pouring over the rampart. Nothing could be more shocking than the carnage that followed the storming of this work, wrote a Royal Marine. The surviving defenders fled, ending the battle. In just 2 short hours of fighting, 1,054 British soldiers, half of those engaged, were either killed or wounded, including many officers. General William Howe lost every member of his staff. American losses were 100 killed and 300 wounded. The British experienced firsthand the ferocity and resolve of the Americans to fight for their freedom. They fought valiantly with great courage and tenacity, despite knowing full well their store of gunpowder was insufficient for the battle at hand. These men, these heroes, knew exactly what they were fighting for: freedom, independence, and faith in God. The story of nation building depends on both memory and free will choices. In Parashat Re'eh, reciting the blessings and curses from these 2 mountains was no accident. On our journey, the Torah describes battles won and battles lost. Remember the ill-fated battle after the episode of the spies, described in Numbers chapter 14, verse 44? The Israelites were defeated by Amalek and the Canaanites at Hormah as they advanced without Moses, without the Ark of the Covenant, and without God. Our people's story began at the Terebinth Moreh, the place where God's connection with our founding father Abraham took root. You see, Re'eh, this parashat is the 3rd since Tisha B'Av. The Haftorah from Isaiah chapter 54 and 55 is one of the parshiot of consolation in the period between the memory of the destruction of the temple and Rosh Hashanah. The theme is faith, hope, and the freedom to return from Babylonian exile to rebuild their temple and their nation. This return depends on hard work, the blessings of Adonai, respect for Torah, and praise for God's commandments. The Haftorah says, Adonai will build your towers with rubies, your gates with precious stones, and your border with gems. All your children will be taught by Adonai. No weapon fashioned against you can succeed. You shall defeat all who rise up against you. Compare Isaiah's words with those delivered by John Winthrop in 1630 aboard a ship bound for Massachusetts Bay. He said, "For we must consider that we shall be as a city upon a hill. The eyes of all people are upon us, so that if we deal falsely with our God in this work we will have undertaken, and so cause him to withdraw his present help from us, we shall be made a story and a byword throughout the world. These visions of a city on a hill are about optimism, desire for freedom and self-governance, and hearkening to God and his teachings, which are all common threads through Jewish history as well as American history. These stories have different starting points. Abraham at the terebinths of Moray, or the Pilgrim's first arrival in Plymouth. Like the blessings and the curses described, in each history there are heroes. Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Moses, Miriam, Pinchas, Joshua, George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Henry Knox, just to name a few. There were villains also: Korach, Balaam, Zimri, Benedict Arnold, Lord Dunmore, Charles Lee, Thomas Hickey, just to name a few. It's our duty, our responsibility, to remember our history both as Jews and as Americans. If we do so, we will see a future ripe with freedom, opportunity, and self-determination. Blessings flow from faith in the special relationship with God, from Torah, and from the commandments given with love to the Jewish people. We bless and praise God who gave us the Torah, v'natan lanu et Torato, and with the ability to learn from history. We bless and praise God who gives us the Torah, notain haTorah, and with it, the ability to remember history and, most importantly, to understand the present. Ken Yehi Ratzon.